We have a little sign-in board that goes around the room. If you could sign it, and then for our
So that's my
minutes, we can have a proper record of who's in attendance.
everything on it that we're suggesting.
Okay.
I'll talk about it.
Okay. Good, how you doing?
Yeah.
So, the advertised meeting was to meet tonight to discuss with the jail committee. We formulated a jail committee, and they were going to research and come up with their recommendations. That was, but something that came unannounced and maybe not advertised as well was, as of 10 minutes to 2 today, the Human Resource Office here at the county received a letter. And so this will be the first topic on the agenda. And it says, this letter came from the sheriff, and it says, "To whom it may concern, I, Tom Bauer, resign my position as Mineral County Sheriff effective 11/13/2017. Tom Bauer." So, before we get on with the jail thing, the state statute, when in the absence of a sheriff, is that the commissioners have to speak with the undersheriff and well, actually, he gets to step up until we make an official appointment. So we have Mr. Boone here tonight. Do you want to speak? You probably better speak.
Well, I did contact, email correspond with Brian Hopkins with NACO, and I did review some statutes. He directed me to one. I was looking at section 732-2122, in which when a vacancy occurs in the office of the sheriff, the undersheriff must, in all things, execute the office of sheriff until a sheriff is elected or appointed and duly qualified.
Right.
I did meet with Undersheriff Boone this afternoon. He did agree to step up and assume the responsibilities of the sheriff, so we can have him step in until such time as either you appoint a sheriff. And because of the timing of this, looking at the other statutes, because of the timing of this, if you chose to appoint somebody, it would be until December of 2018. The person would have to run in the upcoming election year 2018. But the person could be appointed through calendar year 2018, and then they would start their term 2019 if they won the election, but they'd have to run.
And filing opens January 11th.
And goes through maybe mid-March?
It's March, like,
I always know it's right around St. Patrick's Day.
yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Right.
So, and like I said, I did meet with Undersheriff Boone, and he agreed to accept responsibility, and by statute, we allow that. There's also statute 7-4-2206 regarding appointment of interim officers, but we'll just have Sheriff Boone as the acting sheriff, and then we would need to put this on the agenda when we can make sure we give proper notice, but because it was, because it was an emergency, we're
Right.
able to have you assume responsibility.
So basically, I'll repeat what I'm hearing you say, is that right now, we need to make it official that the undersheriff is taking over, and then put on the agenda to have the public come and maybe discuss if we want to appoint him permanently to finish out the term of the sheriff,
Right.
or somebody else to finish out the term of that sheriff
That's correct. So he would be the acting sheriff.
in the interim of our decision, and and then whoever it is would have to agree to run.
Right, or, I mean, you could appoint somebody and then they come till January, February and decide not to run.
Okay,
But we would
okay.
hope that whoever you appoint would
Okay.
choose
I
to
didn't
stick
know there was
around.
a criteria in the MCA you were looking at that they must
No.
agree to run. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
And could he choose to stay on until January, where you guys wouldn't have to appoint someone separate? Could he choose and agree to stay until the election, or?
Right, and yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Right, he could stay the acting sheriff for the next 14 months at all, that could be something that the commission ends up deciding once they've had an opportunity to think about it and listen to public comment.
So, given 732-2122 that already accommodates legally, he is the sheriff until a sheriff is elected or until one is appointed. Does that require a motion then, Ellen, or are we just?
I don't
letting
believe
everybody know
so.
about
It's,
this transition?
the statute basically says that he takes over, and
Okay.
sheriff must in all things execute the office of sheriff until one is elected or appointed, and then
Right.
just for the commission to put on the agenda maybe in the next few weeks or so.
And even though it says that here, I still met with Boone myself and wanted to make sure he was okay with it.
Good.
And I want to say thank you for being willing to step up, even though maybe you feel you're not in much of a choice, but you did tell me you care about the people and the county, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say, Boone? Or that, Boone?
Just, I'll do my best and take care of the people of the county and my deputies.
Mhm. Mr. Ornelas?
The salary, does he get the salary of the sheriff while he's acting sheriff?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, normally, sometimes they wait when they think it's gonna be a temp, but I think we know now that he's gonna be the sheriff.
Yes.
I definitely feel lucky that we have him.
Yes.
Mhm.
We have
Yeah.
someone that's
Yes.
15 years plus in our community that's
Mhm,
reassuring, at least to me.
mhm.
So then do we put it, say, on the agenda for Friday to then officially appointing them? For official appointment?
I don't know if you want to move that quickly. I would just keep him as acting for a little bit, just
Oh,
to give a
okay.
little bit more notice.
People
See
don't-
how
Oh,
you're,
okay.
For a notice of the public to be aware.
yes, and to give Sheriff Boone.
May not be
Well,
thrilled about it in
Yes,
a couple of days.
right, and I give him a few weeks to see how he feels, and just to be fair to Sheriff Boone.
I appreciate that.
So, yeah.
Figure out
Maybe.
what he got himself in.
Yeah, you might want to.
So would, fairness, then would 3 weeks from now be a good time to revisit it, not make it
Sure, I think that,
a decision, and then the public, is 3 weeks enough for the public to talk about it, see if they
That's a
want to.
week after Thanksgiving.
So, today,
Why don't we make it for like
A week after.
December the
December
1st,
1st?
is that, or December 1st or December 8th?
I think the first is
I'm good
What do
with
you
either
think?
one.
Yeah. Okay, Casey, put it on there for December 1. And then also, can you make a note that we remember to remind the payroll girl to adjust his salary? And, okay, well, thanks again, Mr. Boone. This was
Yes.
a shock to you and all of us today. And, so good. Well, stay tuned. You're here on the next item agenda, which is the jail committee. And we've got most everybody here except for not Gordon and who else is missing? Oh, Sheriff Bauer.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Lance Jasper, you're on that team. What-
Yeah.
You want to speak?
Yeah, no, so we've met and Judy and I and the group have done some investigation into ideas and what needs to be done, we think, expeditedly. And I can tell you that both in talking to Sanders County and Missoula County, they're willing to offer any assistance that we need. And I think that's important for a couple of reasons. At the end, when we're essentially reopening the jail, is to make sure kind of we get a physical bill of health from Sanders and Missoula County. They'll come out voluntarily, go through the detention center and give their input if there's something that needs to be updated or corrected to make sure that it's safe for the detention officers. But I think in this interim period of time, there's about 7 items that I think need to be done right away. I don't see them as issues that can't be done. They're not necessarily budgetary in scope. They will become that. But the first thing is, one is, it has been a long time since the detention center has been not remodeled, but improved with just go check the nuts, bolts, paint, all of those type things. And so our first recommendation is to immediately start in not refurbishing, but just bring it back up to while there's no one in it, paint it, do what needs to be done maintenance wise while you have security issues. So get that portion done. Second issue is Judy obtained a job description for a jail administrator, and we suggest that immediately gets put out for a position. My suggestion is, because the budgetary issues are still trying to be figured out, we put on there that wage will depend on experience on it. And I spoke with Jason who runs the detention center in Missoula. And then I also spoke with some of the jailers that are friends of mine. And while each of them, said money is a factor, it's not the determining factor. And there's a lot of young or younger individuals that are at corporal or above that may be looking to get into administration of detention centers for purposes of advancing their career. Also mentioned the fact that there are a lot of individuals who have just retired that might be interested in like a 1-year contract, that type of thing, to help bring the detention officers and potentially new detention officers up to trained status. So I think our interest level will be high on that. Also, I think I brought Missoula was kind enough to share with us their hiring for detention officers, so I have that. Likewise, I think just as important as advertising for the administrator is to make sure we get it out for employment opportunities for detention officers. Let's see. I went back and forth with this because right now in both in Sanders County and in Missoula County, the sheriff's office actually is the administrator of the detention facility. But in talking with both facilities, the statutes provide, and I can cite those if we need to, but where the commission can actually separate that position. And while I don't know that it's necessary right now that occurred because of newly discovered information today with Tom's resignation, but I believe just there's no need to have the sheriff's department, like if a sheriff to deal with the administrative side of the detention center there. So you can separate that out and make the administrator responsible for reporting to the commissioners. And the only reason I say that is it seems like to have a double repeating of a system just puts added strength or added responsibility on the sheriff's department, which may be focusing more on the law enforcement side and not have the really the information that the commissioners need for that part of it. And so statutorily, I think you can do that without any problem. In addition, it just provides a nice wall, in my mind, between sheriff's department and detention. I know from my experience in litigating cases with detention centers, it always seems like that overflow of where the detention officers and law enforcement get involved. Law enforcement doesn't have the training on detention centers that they need, so it's always an avenue that can be attacked. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to do that. As far as, and this will have to be looked in a little bit more, but I think in our meeting it was agreed that the sheriff's department would give up one of the deputies to help fund this cost. There may be some issues legally that may be more difficult or not, but initially I think everybody realizes that you got to have a detention center if you're going to have the sheriff's department. And likewise, the revenues that can be brought in by holding DOC inmates. And it's not revenues necessarily in the sense of profit and loss. Is if we don't have a detention center, we know that we're going to spend a large amount of money transporting and housing inmates, which if we're operating our detention center, we will still spend money on that. But that amount of money would be significantly less than if we're shipping them out and not having it used. We looked and talked about the idea of potentially contracting, a private type of detention center. And, initially I'd looked at that too. There's a big excess of female inmates right now that they're having a very difficult time placing. But there's 108 bed units coming on in Billings here shortly. And then so it likely will alleviate that shortage. So you would have to know where your shortage is going to be on it. And it looks to me like that that portion, plus just my experience recently in the parole hearings, and that I'm seeing based on the state's budget is anybody that's up for parole, for the most part, I mean, it's almost guaranteed right now that you're gonna be released. So I don't think the crisis of finding beds is gonna be that big in the at least next couple of years until the budget gets figured out. So I don't see private contracting as a realistic option for us. Plus, we only have 26 beds. To be realistic, you need to be, 100 bed type unit where, that you can justify that type of expenditure. I mean, I'm sure there'd be some interest, but overall, for us, it just doesn't make any sense. Both Sanders and Missoula County had volunteered as once we get the completion of the painting and updating of whatever needs to be done, they would come out and inspect it with their individuals that they use in their facility to monitor it free of cost for us. We're happy to help out. Also, I'd like to see the commissioners open a line of communication with Missoula County, specifically TJ. He's the sheriff there. He met with me for over an hour, basically just saying whatever we can do to help our neighbor is they're willing to do. But right now, I think most importantly, so this doesn't drag on any longer, is we get those applications posted. And likewise, Jason said, there's probably people that would be interested in, and he's willing to share that with the union in Missoula as well. Even though it might take from his staff, he's willing to do that. And then likewise, I think there's people that have retired here and have moved here that have a lot of experience too that might be interested in, depending on which way it goes, whether it's a contract for a year to kind of administrate it, or if it's internal. I think there's people that are qualified here in Mineral County to do the administration portion of it. And likewise, there's a ready pool of people in Missoula area and other places that if they know that it's a job that comes with certainty and those type of things in Mineral County, I think that we'll have a good pool, but I think that should be done tomorrow. Getting those posted for applications and do it with regards to the wages as DOE, and we can, as we get those in, we can look at those and then.
You mean for the administrator or for all the jailer positions?
And both, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
since they are union, I kind of have to wait. The union, decides on the wages. So
That's why it's
we-
DOE.
Yeah, so we've been waiting to try to give a raise to the jailers, which has been foregone since July for not getting a meeting with him yet. So any pay that,
No, that's and be just depending
Okay.
on experience. You have to leave it vague, but I think the key is to get
application in.
as many applications we can, and then hopefully get really good candidates, and hopefully other previous jailers that were good reapply, and we can keep it.
And then
Fully
Lance, back
staffed.
up a bit to the part you said that Missoula County would come out and do something for free. Was that just the inspection you meant?
Yeah, no, Jason and I met with Jason and I think her name was Lisa, I can't remember for sure. But so Jason obviously is in charge of the detention center there in Missoula, and then the other female that I met with was in charge of juvenile detention. Both have more experience in detention than I can imagine. And so they were all about helping in any way they could, even to the point of, we could, that we're round tabling it. So whether or not the commissioners would approve it from Missoula County, but hiring them to have a shift supervisor, you know, for 3 shifts for a period of time. I mean, everything was on the table, and they said they'll do whatever they can to make sure that, you know, Mineral County's not in a position so long as it, you know, doesn't expose them. But opening up the union for extra shifts, possibility where they can you know, have a sign-up list for coming to Mineral County, providing extra training, all of those type of things. I mean, they didn't say no to anything. They're open to, you know, to whatever needs we may have. I mean, we may pay for a portion of those for sure if we're, you know, having their staff come in and pull shifts in our place, certainly. And, you know, I talked to them about the idea of, you know, giving them 10 beds, something like that, as and so that leaves 16 for us as a possible way to help pay for their expertise.
The
and
barter
training.
system, the
Yeah,
beds for
yeah,
some
and
help.
They're not opposed to anything. I think what they're looking for is a little bit more refined plan than what, I mean, because I kind of went in and said, how do you operate a jail? And tell me what we need to do. And, you know, there's were the same things we talked about. Making sure that you have the training necessary for the detention officers so that they're not endangered, inmates aren't endangered, and then you have management staff that is seeing that those policies and procedures are implemented as they're supposed to be.
In addition to that, Roman, back when this started, because as we know, we still have 2 detention officers still currently staffed. So the repairs and things that Lance is referring to started 2 weeks ago. So sanding and grinding and painting and inspection of all of those things is ongoing. It was already started, so.
So basically, this week, like, hopefully you'd be able to go through this job description and get it advertised for a jail administrator.
Well,
And then simultaneously, hopefully that person would be hired to help when you get new jailers hired.
Yeah, you'd have a stack, ideally, it's a stack of applications for jailers as well, but you'd have an administrator there that knows the criteria and what you're looking for.
Because some of the other things we looked at that would help, that a jail administrator could do, that, you know, it's like all your food, not really your food contracts, but your contracts with the state and the prisoners that you do hold for revenue, you know, all those contracts take time, but they all need to be redone and you know, updated, because you probably, there's a potential there to get, you know, more money per day. But you
More
have to,
inmates,
like,
more
it's-
inmates per day.
Right, and it's a lot of work because you do have to go through and fill out everything that justifies why you're charging that. And, you know, you need a person that just focuses on that, so. There was just some little things that,
So,
you know, would help.
so what did I mean, you also saw, so the reason for a jail administrator, and of course, that would probably be a little more money than the jailer or somebody who agrees to kind of be the boss.
Certainly.
So then, what did the committee decide, a way to find that alternative funding to
Well,
help?
that's part of it is
Yeah.
through the deputy, the one deputy for a period of time, so that we can have that additional funds. But I think Judy found that, you know, right now, until we start spending a bunch of funds on these transporting, the money is there.
So since we're down 2 deputies, you're recommending we only rehire 1 and take
Right.
the savings to try to get the jail
A
running?
jail administrator, and you actually have, I don't know, you have more money maybe just to pay detention people too.
Mhm.
So what happens is you have to do some kind of a budget amendment, but at the end, like, because you can't change your salaries, you know, without that. But it's, you can, I guess at the end, you might have to adjust where money comes from to pay for it.
So Sheriff Boone, you're on the committee.
Yeah.
What do you think about this aspect of the recommendation?
Well, I understand their train of thought, but I got 2 things. You know, one, you guys are aware that if we lose that position, I can't utilize reserves.
Mhm.
I mean, that's state statute.
I don't even know if we have any reserves now. do we?
Well, we got Ernie and Bettis that help out.
Mhm.
The other thing I guess I would say is, you know, we're looking to save those funds to shift some over there. My other thought on that is potentially we could save those funds for a period of 3 years if you three are willing to sign off on a COPS grant, if we apply and get one. Because it's a 3+1, we pay that 4th year. You're familiar with that, we've done it in
Right,
the
yeah, we get it
past.
free for a while, then we have to pay for
And
that.
then we won't lose that person.
Well, I'd be all for that, Boone, because here's what I would hope could happen is that if you're agreeing to this short term, like you said, we want to get another deputy back. We just don't have the money to do it currently. If we got the jail going right now and did without a deputy for the short term, then either with a COPS grant or just the passage of time, maybe the public would agree to a levy, an additional levy to help fund, public safety a little better, because right now that's been our problem with trying to get wages up, is that when the state gives us our valuation, this is all the money we have, and then we can't.
Well, with the school levy, I find it really hard to believe that the people in this county are gonna be able to afford. I mean, everybody's house payment just went up because of this levy, you know, and most people in this county, it's not a big moneymaker here, and not a lot of people don't, I mean, we live paycheck to paycheck, I do, so I know they do.
Oh, yeah.
I think the
Nobody
COPS
wants to
grant
ask for
is,
that, yeah.
the COPS grant is something that's a little more feasible.
But like you say,
3
after the 3 or 4 years runs out, then we have to pay for it.
Yeah, but
And-
that gives us 3 years to set a little aside, or like Lance thinks that, you know, we should be financially better with hopefully
more
with
houses being
Tricon and
built.
some other things, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And-
But I'd like that, you know, put out there and you guys to agree on that.
Oh,
And are we down 3 officers now, though?
Right now, we're down 3.
Right, so we only have 4.
Possibly 4 here shortly.
Yeah.
Well, and if we cut that deputy and we lose the reserves, that's another 3 right off the top that we would.
So-
lose
Yeah,
on
but
that.
I looked at that statute
Yeah.
quickly at it, but when there's, I mean, the statute can say one thing, but when you have legitimate business reasons, or there's a emergency situation, I mean, there's exceptions to every rule.
Well, I think it sounds like we've been using Joe Bettis for 12 years now. So if a deputy position is cut, we just can't hire 3 more Joe Bettises, is what I take it. Joe Bettis has been utilized the whole time. Simply by virtue of cutting one position doesn't mean we can't use Joe either. I think he's been used already. We're just not supplementing the cut with more reserve officers. That's how I would interpret it. But what do you interpret it, Lance?
Well, I haven't looked at it enough. I mean, there's the differences, but I mean, I can tell you one thing is, if you don't advertise for this job and you put it in effect to get the application, you haven't made any decision other than getting applications. But otherwise, and I'm not signing up for a 6-month commission here to figure out how to open the jail. If you don't get this thing open in 30 days, to me, that's the downside of this. This should be hopefully done in 30 days and back operating and that part of it. So, you know, to me, that other stuff, it'll figure itself out, but we'll also look at it the same way as you don't have a detention center, you don't need deputies. I mean, I hate to say that, but I mean, that's why you contract out. That's where certain counties have their, you know, law enforcement contracted out, and I just don't want to see that. To me, that makes no sense with where we live and the corridor we're in and the need we have. And I mean, I know how, you know, the officers in Missoula respond to Sealy at times. It's tough to get out there, so I don't expect it would be a lot better necessarily if they were coming to Mineral County. You know, maybe they when they have a detention center and that type of thing, it would be better. But to me, you know, we live in Mineral County for a reason. It's Mineral County. It's not Missoula County. I mean, I could live in anywhere I
Oh,
want.
yeah, it'll take away our autonomy that we kind of
Right.
enjoy out here.
Right.
Independent.
So I just see, I mean, these recommendations, I mean, we've come up with them quick. We've taken time out of our days and work to come up with a plan. And to me, there's, you know, exception of running an ad in the paper, there's very little cost right now, but you gotta get that going and seeing what we get for applications as soon as possible. I mean,
So then do we come up with a whole new job description for a
We-
jail, or
we
what do
already
we
have
do,
one.
what do we do with the current administrative assistant that has these duties now?
Well, my belief is what you do is the new administrator is responsible for the operation
Right.
of the detention center. Period. That will be their job, to handle all things, including working at times as a jailer and whatever it takes. But they're gonna be reporting to the commissioners as a independent, no different than the sheriff would come in and talk about their body of work. And,
So then what do we do with the one that's being paid to be the administrative assistant now?
Well,
To
they
do
can-
these,
well, there's
I mean,
certainly
you're
there's.
looking for
I mean-
a jail administrator. I mean, literally, this person has to know how to do budgets, has to know all the laws, it's very lengthy. I mean, it's something that, to run that jail properly, and I'll give you a copy, but there's a lot of things that their qualifications have to be. I mean, they're literally doing everything that runs that jail. Plus, keeping track of who the system administrator is, I mean. And they answer to the commissioners.
That's working shifts.
And they might have to work a shift, but it's, it's,
Yeah, they'd be an active jailer as well, not
Right.
just,
right,
And responsible
And
for
they-
training
yeah,
those that come on.
exactly. I have a
Like
copy
next
here.
year.
of it.
to change ones?
Job duties?
I mean,
Right.
that
Well, there
person
may be,
runs-
and there may be internally that there's
You
an
may have
individual
somebody here
that once that
that's
position is
qualified, I
don't know. I think what Lori-
detention.
Yeah, I just, so then do we shift it, these duties somewhere else, or?
Well, the jail administrator that we currently have right now is actually.
the sheriff.
Well, under the administrative assistant's job description.
We're
is-
talking about the jail administrator though, not.
Right, no, I'm just trying to get things clarified. I mean, as to, I know she's been busy just trying to keep the dispatch center open, and so I'm all for hiring a, jail administrator. It's just, then do we, what do we do with?
Separate those duties,
Yeah,
separate out those
separate,
duties? Okay.
Well, I think that can easily be done. I mean,
Yeah, that's what
one
I'm
of
just
those things,
asking
and
is-
that's why I don't necessarily look at it as necessarily a bad thing that if we reduce one deputy right now, because one of the things that's gonna be the upside is that no one in law enforcement's gonna have to deal with detention in the sense of like they were before. So that frees up more time for deputies and sheriffs, under sheriffs to be patrolling versus it. So I don't see it as a situation where, you're losing or giving up something. It just allows more time to focus on what your area of specialty is. I mean, it's for, if you gave me a case that deals with estates or probates, it's gonna take me days and weeks to figure that out. Well, same thing for a law enforcement officer that's given a detention problem. It takes them a lot of time because that's not their focus or their expertise. So let's try to get it to a situation where the most trained people are doing what they should be doing.
Lori's talking about the job description that was rewritten in March of 2012. I guess Ernie would have been here then. And it says, the position includes 3 distinct areas of responsibility. 1, jail supervisor doing schedules, evaluate dispatchers and detention officers. 2, civil registrar, civil and criminal papers, maintain records. 3, grants administrators, prepare grants, monitor, prepare grants have been awarded. So we have to take, are you okay with one of those being taken away from you?
What's that?
Are you okay with one of those 3 positions being taken away from you?
Sure, that's what you want.
Well,
She hasn't been the jail supervisor though.
Yeah, but
That's what it says right here.
Yeah, but
But that
I mean,
is
but you
what
can
she's
look at the-
looking
But you
for, is to
update
be
your
an-
policies.
As
You'll update-
the administrative assistant, because she's not, she's considered administrative, so she's not part of the union, so that's,
Yeah, so would this new jail administrator be non-union like Ronnie is?
Absolutely.
Because I'm, like in Sanders, their jail administrator is also the detention administrator, so I'm gonna guess here that you would have the detention administrator, which would be, or dispatch, sorry. And then the jail, you would separate them out. But when you do that, you rewrite the job description is the person, you know, is what you're having them do. I mean, that happens all the time. Like, sometimes you hire a person and they end up doing something more, so you have to add that to their job description at a later time or something, but
Mhm.
Well, is Ronnie doing, she's jail administrator right now, assistant, right?
no, she's considered administrative assistant, and that was, you know, with the job, but she's been so busy with the dispatch that,
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, they're three distinct areas, and you have to have someone trained in every area, or you're just gonna kick yourself down the road, whether it be that, you know, there's a failure that results in a lawsuit or whatever, but, you know, it's become complex, and, you know, I read through the job description that Judy, got from Sanders County for the, detention administrator, keeping up on all of the federal laws that deal with inmates, all of the state laws, all of the healthcare issues. I mean, like I said,
their medicine, no one, yeah, just.
you know, the responsibility for the county, I mean, you have the responsibility of deputies on the street to make sure that they're, protected, but as soon as you take someone into custody, man, you have another level of responsibilities and duties there that, if are messed up, can really cause, a big problem.
And one of the other things that we looked at, because there was you know, when I went and looked at like where your money comes from, just to run your jail, I mean, it all comes from the income from prisoners. So, you know, right now you don't have any income from prisoners, so, I mean, to have a really healthy jail, if you have a good administrator, I mean, I'm guessing we used to have about 10 of our own, and we rented out the other 14 beds. It used to be like $300,000 income. It's not money making, it was how we ran it, like how you pay for the jailers and their jobs and their benefits and
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah,
all
you
the
still
things that go
lost a
with it.
little bit of money, but not as much as if you
Yeah.
outsourced it all.
That's
Yeah.
exactly the key here.
Because you're
is
gonna
if you
always-
outsource
yeah.
it, you
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 will
really
lose
take a
money.
hit.
you're gonna be trying to figure out how to afford anyone.
Right.
And
because
other
you're-
thing that when we kind of talk to people, I think the community expects they want their people locked up in our
Right.
jail. They don't want them, they don't want to pay them to send them somewhere else, and they don't want them back on the street. So, I mean, we need to use our jail, and this is the most effective way to do it, is have an administrator that really runs it correctly, that helps us keep out of trouble legally, and can keep it full, and keep happy employees that stay there. And there is some other ways to like help with some of the wages too. That I know you have to go into negotiations, so, but I mean, there is things that it recommended that, you know, some of the reasons people were quitting is, a lot of people said it was money, but their main thing was the management. So I think it's really important to get the proper person in there and get the trust back and get people in there. It's just like an immediate thing that needs to be done, so. Anyways.
Mr. Smalley?
I say two things, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Is there an issue, I don't think there would be an issue with the union, but per se, to give a raise to those guys, the union's not gonna fight you giving a raise to them now.
they'll find a
Increasing
decrease.
the jailer's
Yeah.
pay immediately.
No, you-
Because it's a recruit and retain.
The conflict would be that detention staff were receiving a raise and dispatch were not. So I'm not appraised on the situation regarding the contracts, but since dispatch and detention both work right next to each other and they're both in on a lot of the same contracts, there's a possibility that whatever you do for detention has to be done likewise for dispatch.
I mean, I would think a call through to like NACO or somebody, you know, that could give you an idea of that, since we are in this certain situation, to be able to move this along, that there's a, like Lance is saying, hey, this is a unique situation, and how can we, you gotta be able to, it's like, I mean, the patrol went through it when I first got on, and it's talking about recruiting and retraining. You gotta be able to recruit people, and you gotta retain them. Because if you're always training them, you're just dumping money out, you're gonna have more issues. People don't know what you could put the best policies in place that you could ever dream of, but if you don't have people that are staying there, learning them and knowing them, then it doesn't matter. You have to keep the people that are working there for long term. And you gotta pay them. I mean, if you can go somewhere else in the county and I don't know, I've heard all kinds of rumors of town pump, which is, I don't know what the pay is, so don't quote me on that, but, if you can go somewhere where there's a lot less stress, where you're not having to deal with people that wanna hurt you, that people, you know, people that have done bad things and people that generally may hate you, why would you stay doing that? I mean, I don't know if there's very many people in here other than a few jailers that have done it that would want to stay there, and especially for low pay. So you gotta get, to me, you have to have that incentive to go. My second point would be, there's been some talk about losing a deputy, and I haven't been privy to all of the discussions on that, but, in my opinion, the situations that I have dealt with, on the road out there, that nobody else wants to go to, you don't want to lose those deputies. You're putting their lives in jeopardy. Every person that you cut, every time you do that, you're putting not only their life in jeopardy, but mine too. Because we end up backing each other up all the time on these horrible crashes. Running around, Boone and I, running around with guys that have guns pointed at us, and that is a dangerous situation. And every time that you start to cut personnel and lose your backup, it gets more and more dangerous. We have an inherently dangerous job anyways, and these guys going into the houses like that, you know, for domestics and bar fights and stuff like that, you start to cut their backup, and it creates more stress on those guys. You know, so that's a huge thing.
That's a $64 million question.
Well,
I totally understand what you're saying, absolutely.
And, you know, it's a horrible thing to say, but law enforcement would say, you know, policy's written in blood, you know, and you don't want to have to find out later that we should have had backup for these guys and have somebody get shot or killed or, you know, seriously injured because they didn't have any backup. You know, they were the only guy out. And, I mean, we got a lot of experience that have had some terrible things that have happened that maybe nobody here even hears about. But we're dealing with those things, and I think there's a good relationship with the Sheriff's Department and the Highway Patrol here. I look forward to that continuing with Mike. But these guys, they need that deputy spot, truly. That's more my opinion, I understand. Sort of, 50-50 on Highway Patrol.
Yeah. Well, and then when you read the papers, whether it be Mineral County or the state of Montana or even the national government, the big thing then is how do you fund it? And commissioners, contrary to popular belief, commissioners at the county level don't raise taxes. All we have is the money that's allotted to us by the state. If we were in the city, we could, be more creative with raising taxes, or at the state legislature, they can raise their taxes. But so we only have a certain pot of money, and that's
We
why.
can make money off our jail, so we gotta get it going.
Yeah.
Not make money, but cover costs, instead of that way.
Well, I like Boone's idea about the COPS grant too. I think that's something when's the next cycle of that?
I mean, you remember,
It's coming up.
yeah, it's coming up like right now.
I mean, we've used it before, what,
Yeah.
3-4 times
Yeah.
since I've been here.
Yep.
Yeah, we need to take full advantage of all those things, and making calls saying, hey, when we get jail back, we've got room, try and get people
I
into
think
it.
that's one of the big
Yeah.
things an
We need the staff.
administrator do. If you get the right person that has those connections, it's like anything else. Is if you know the right person to call to give us your extra and that type of thing is, and that's why I was saying to get Sanders and Missoula to come in and essentially give you the physical to say, look, they're ready to roll. To try not to delay that from occurring, because you know it's like restarting any business. If you're closed for very long, you become wonder why. And so I mean, if this is, to me, is a situation where we're going in to fix it, and when I say fix it, you know, paint, and make sure it's up to date, and going with a new approach, then it doesn't have that bad taste in the mouth that some people might have about sending people here. But if you're shut down 3-4 months, you're, to get back that trust, goodwill that you have is going to be a hard sell to do.
Mr. Ornelas?
Just remind the commissioners that 2 of the deputy positions are being fully paid for by the towns of Superior and Alberton. And so that reduces, so if you reduce 1 deputy, that reduces the amount of patrol time that they're able to give, potentially could cost the sheriff's office money, because they're not able to meet the obligations that they have.
He said,
Yeah, we have to put so much time in each
Yeah, Superior pays 1.5
for a
deputy,
contract.
and Alberton pays what the salary for half a deputy.
the town of Superior pays a total of $74,000 annually for 20 hours. We're St. Regis' dog.
All that is in this budget, it's all.
Why is it St. Regis?
Because they're not incorporated town, so they're covered by the county automatically. And I think Albertine, AJ,
Tax and
So another thing to keep in mind too, you know, all these detention officers that we're hiring, part of the problem that's been in the past is in the whole entire sheriff's office, you only have 2 FTOs, field training officers. And detention has never had a field training officer, which is a huge liability because you have a supervisor that's, you know, walks around with them, shows them for a couple of weeks and says, you're good to go. They haven't been to the academy, they haven't been trained by an FTO. So somebody, whether it's just jail administrator or whoever, that's something that they're gonna need to have as well, is they're gonna have to be a certified field training officer. That's a huge liability. And, you know, to have somebody that's training that's not a field training officer. So to keep in mind too, you can only train so many people at a time.
I'd like to add to that if you're gonna restaff the detention facility, there's a tendency in these emergencies to kind of grasp at straws and just accept whatever applications show up. If you're just throwing warm bodies behind desks, you're not gonna have a good time. This whole problem will repeat itself in 6 months if you're just grabbing random people just because they applied. They need to be qualified, they need to be capable of the job. So,
Which is why Lance was saying that he wanted to get as many applications as possible to make that pool larger,
Yeah, that's the
so
biggest.
that we
have
can
much
stray
of a pool
away
here.
from.
And be careful about how fast we fill it too, because if we're used to running at 15, 16,
Yeah, no, I don't
we
think.
can't, let's not inundate,
Nobody, that's why I think
Yeah.
it's, initially what I would, at least in my mind, I foresee is you get a jail administrator, you get your staff, and you train with just our local inmates for a period of time to where then you can add in, DOC and, in talking with Jason, I mean, they give you a brief, I mean, you get their description of what type of inmate you're getting. Is it going to be, and try to find, the ones that are less likely to cause issues, that type of thing. And that happens. And because I was asking him about that, it essentially is saying that you can, do that. But to me, is to get that pool and then get an administrator, get a pile of applications. I agree with you. You don't go hire just because you can hire 6 that you need to hire. You don't hire 6, but you do start, when you find a good applicant that is willing, then you bring them on in that training process, making sure that they're getting what they need to be, and any administrator that we'd have is going to be a training officer, which I agree with. That's the whole reason that I believe that this needs to be separated off from the sheriff, is that you need a dedicated facility where their number one interest is the detention center. And it's not saying anything bad about deputies, but their job is to be out on the streets patrolling and to doing that side of the business. And that's two distinct sides. And so you have an expert on each side that is doing, and, you know, that's their job and their passion for it, so that you don't get someone that says, well, geez, now I gotta go deal with the jail. No, you don't need that. And with today's day and age, you can't have that overlap in it. Even though Missoula has their sheriff's office, Jason, you know, runs that, he's the administrator of that jail. And, you know, the sheriff himself is, he knows he's not the most qualified to do it. And so that's why I just see it as, it's absolutely necessary. I mean, it just really is.
In addition to that, Lance was saying in his speakings to Missoula that they would be willing to allow the jail administrator to come up for a couple of weeks and train by their corporals and above that are actual certified FTOs for quite some time to get them, get them a feeling and get them going.
Yeah, that's an idea. They have FTOs there.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're open, and that's why I said to reach out to them and open the line of communications, because I couldn't tell them what we needed. I was just asking for ideas and that type of thing. But I can tell you that in talking to Sanders County and Missoula is, you know, their brotherhood of what they do is to see that, you know, there's no one is not trained in that type of thing. And so, you know, the resources are out there, and they're not, you know, just advice and that type of thing is free from them. But they also have the ability to pull from their manpower if we need to. They're willing to put us on, you know, call lists for their union employees. And those are things that, you know, normally I wouldn't expect to see happen, but they're, you know, they're willing to do it. So. And that's a defense attorney asking them. So if you guys talk nice, and they might even do more. More likely.
So what are the requirements you think would be needed for the person who is going to be the jail administrator? Academy?
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
And
Mrs.
Ellen could
Sanders
probably
County.
revise that a little bit and take it.
Oh, okay. That's already in
Because
Sanders
there's a
County.
lot they're gonna have to do.
Well, a lot of that is also,
Yeah.
Dispatch,
detention
too.
/ dispatch.
Well, I crossed.
So a lot of that
And there's a lot
will
across
apply.
I crossed the
Yeah.
dispatch.
Okay.
So it looks longer than it really is.
Yeah.
And then this is just the one they use in Missoula for the,
And
just
that's
for
not the job
detent.
description, but it's just the general notice.
Notice they used to.
for
Well, I guess I was
employment
talking about too, not the job description, but what kind of requirements of somebody. I mean, like AJ said, FTO, academy.
At the bottom, it kind of tells you what you're looking, you know, like so many hours or so many years of experience and,
Okay.
yeah, so,
Ability to remain calm.
yeah. I mean, you don't have to have a Bachelor of Science or anything like
Education
that,
experience,
so, yeah.
okay. Detention training preferred.
I just want to revisit Sergeant Smalley's issues. There's a concern, as the county attorney, I'm as well concerned because having enough deputies on the force and out in the field is important for public safety. I mean, that's one of our top priorities for the county, or how I see it, is public safety with fire and law enforcement. With Sheriff Bauer, I mean, Sheriff Bauer gone now, we're down to 4, right? You said?
Yeah.
Have we had any applicants at all for deputies?
We've scheduled 5 interviews.
Okay.
I think 5 or 6. 5, yeah, for Friday.
Okay.
Unfortunately, none of them were pre-post certified, so
You did tell
you're
me
gonna
that, I
lose,
forgot.
if we hire somebody out of that pool, you're gonna lose them for 3 months, for sure.
Yeah, you did tell me that. They have to go to the academy. They're not certified yet. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the other thing is the longevity, and Trooper Smalley was talking about is keeping people here, and I always think that that's a big factor, is if you get a family here that wants to build a home. So if they started out as a detention officer, and like you had the interest in being a deputy or moving into law enforcement, you know, you can also make in that job description is that if we put you through the through the academy, in that you stay 3 years. If there is a position that opens up, you get a priority or something like that to help build, like me, when I start having kids here, I want to keep my kids where they're at. Likewise, with these young kids that are coming up and want to be law enforcement officers, same type of thing. You plant the seed and get it to a situation where that they want to stay and build their home here, and they see in 3 years of a detention officer, I'm giving preferential hiring or to be a deputy, where they start getting their roots, is another way to keep people here. When the pay is not going to be as good, you're not going to beat the pay in Missoula, but you can't live in Missoula what you can live out here for them. And if you're living out here, you don't want to live in Missoula. And so, no, I think for right now, I think it's really important we just focus on really getting this administrator and job applicants. But I think over time, like if you want to keep moving this forward of making it better, I think those are other ideas we can do internally as we move forward to make it more appealing for people to stay here for longevity.
If you did what he said, I'd do it. But right now, you're asking someone to step up to a big job with a big target on their back for not a lot of benefits.
Mr. Seaman?
How many empty beds were there when they shut the jail down?
We have 16, 17 in?
15.
15 in? Okay.
15 were in.
So,
You
yeah,
had a lot of empty beds, why weren't they full?
I'm sure we didn't have the staff.
Well, yeah, but if you had them full all the time, you'd have a little more money to work with to appease the staff. That's the key to the thing, keep the pump full. And you don't even have to get dangerous criminals. The government will furnish white-collar criminals to come here and sit in those beds. Somebody dropped the ball.
Well, and there's some guidelines if we take federal prisoners.
I realize that.
Right. So
But
we have
they're
to make sure.
non-dangerous, none of the people are gonna gripe because you're bringing all the deadbeat, dangerous ones here. Keep it full all the time. And if you got one of your own, kick one of them out and send them someplace else. But keep our own, but keep the beds full all the time. That's the key to the whole thing to make this run. If you're gonna have an administrator, he better be shopping for prisoners all the time and better keep it full.
Well, and it's almost kind of like the chicken and the
That's
egg,
our
you know, we
goal.
need, we
I mean,
need it
that's
full to
exactly-
bring money, but
yeah.
we need staff to keep it open to get it full, and
That's our goal.
But
So,
if you
yeah.
realize
Something
that, he's gonna
manageable
come
for
here
that.
and take the job and he's gonna do that. Because his job depends on it.
right.
Right, but you have to have a certain amount of staff per the ratio per inmates.
Oh, I
So when you're,
realize that,
when you're
but, yeah,
shorthanded and you don't have the staff, you can't keep
What I'm
stocking
saying
it
is
full
you
because then you
botch
have
it from
another
the
security
beginning.
issue.
If you get an administrator, you won't botch it from the beginning. He'll run it right and you'll keep it full with the right amount of staff.
That's why we're here.
That's
what we're doing.
That's why we're here.
Your jailers and your
That's right.
dispatchers, if you get the right guy and keeps the bed full,
Right.
then all this goes away.
Rick, it doesn't always work that way. Does the jail?
I know it doesn't,
especially with
but
the
it's not
feds,
even
because
close
they
to
have
working
to,
that way.
the federal government has a certain amount of beds that they're contracted with over in Missoula, and they will fill those beds first before they're
I
gonna
know,
do
but
the overflow.
Right.
what I'm saying,
Right.
if you had an administrator. to
But
shop
that's exactly the goal,
That's
Mr.
our
Seaman,
goal.
that you're talking about, that I'm talking about, is that to utilize it to its maximum ability, making sure that you have the right people in there that are knowing who to call to make sure if there's an extra person that needs or housing, that we're getting that. But, and so I
Someone
think
just
everybody
stay on
here
top
is,
of it. Stay on
exactly,
top of
is,
it.
is,
Yes.
And then, gentlemen, your name, please?
Truman Puckett.
Truman Puckett, go ahead.
You know, I've been sitting here listening to you guys, I feel like I'm in the Congress listening to everything. We got a crisis, and every one of you, all you wanna do is add to it. We have to take care of this stuff within. And I haven't heard one of you say anything about that,
About what?
about doing it within here. Don't be worried about bringing an administrator. You can't even afford to raise $2 to the sheriff or the deputies, and you want to bring an administrator that has to have a Philadelphia lawyer degree, and you want to give him this much money. Why don't we just just like Costco. You ever been to Costco? Everybody at Costco, they do whatever they have to do to keep that wheel greased. So everybody here in this community needs to step up and double their shift or whatever until we get out of this crisis, and then we'll start worrying about hiring these out of places, people. But it's just like right here. Let me show you this newspaper. This news article right here hurts this county. Right here. And Tom Bauer and 2 or 3 of the other ones said we have a cancer in the jail system. And it's been going on for a long, long time. But Tom Bauer said he was going to get $100 a day for the jail beds instead of 62. But he hasn't had time. You know what I'm saying? He resigned now. There was a guy that sat right there at your October 27th meeting that quit his job as a deputy, and he sat right there in that seat and said, it's not the money as much as it's the management. The management's gone now. So let's get together, pick up our big boy panties, and let's go forward within. Let's pack, here's the thing. This gentleman back here is saying keeping the beds full, and he's trying to say, well, Missoula probably not going to send us anybody to put them in bed. I can take you right now, and before the sun comes up in the morning, I'll have every bed in that place full with drug addicts. And when I used to talk to Tom Bauer about it, you know what his response was? Oh, I know where they're at, and I'm watching them.
Okay. Well, Mr. Bucket,
So you agree? We're all out. We're out.
right, well, so we're here tonight because this committee, these people are on the committee of the jail committee to decide. Some are ex-jailers and the sheriff and undersheriff, and the committee just telling us what they found, and it seems like, if I'm hearing it correctly, is that maybe the sheriff and the undersheriff don't feel that they have the time to put into running the jail, or as you say, put on the big boy panties and do both. They'd like to only worry about taking care of the road and have someone else who is solely educated, dedicated, focused on picking up the phone every day, calling to see if we can get some inmates
Well,
in, making sure the grants.
Where are you going to get the revenue?
So that's what we're,
Over here,
so what,
I heard all he wants to do is a levy, another levy.
no, so,
Boone over there, he knows better than that. This community is taxed to death.
right, so here's what we're gonna do, Mr. Puckett, this is what the jail committee is recommending. Mr. Smalley agrees that they need more money for the jailers to retain, but he also said we need more deputies. Unfortunately, as a county commissioner, we're required to pass a balanced budget. So right now, what the jail committee has suggested is, in the short term, with the vacancies and deputies, to hire them all with the exception of one, and take that money and help get a jail person on board to starting the jail up, training, retaining, bed shopping, and all that. So the question on the table is, should we not hire one deputy and go forward with a jailer administrator? So that's where the money would come from, not from a levy. It's going to come from doing with one less deputy on the road until we can get a COPS grant, which is a federal government grant that pays for 3 years of the deputy's wages, and we get it for free. But then the subsequent years, we have to pay for him to keep him on full time. So that's where we're at currently. Am I correct, everybody?
Yep.
So that would have to come out of the same thing, yeah. So, and I do meet with the union on November 20th, so that fortunately is coming sooner rather than later, but we just need to know if it's okay to talk increase wages with them and the jail administrator, but unfortunately it's going to have to do with one less deputy.
Does the jail currently meet Department of Corrections and federal standards for housing?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so there's no issues with like we're in this interim where we have no inmates, gonna do some repairs to the facility.
And then nobody
But
comes?
we're already good
to go,
Yes.
so we don't have to make any changes to the jail to make it,
We just need,
But you'll need jailers.
okay,
That
so we're
kind of
just gonna
stuff.
make it requirements for
We're
this.
already halfway through getting everything primed up. Y'all get me some paint in 2 weeks, I'll have that thing looking great.
And we just went through, I think we spent, what, $10,000 or $11,000 or something,
all
just
the
had all the
locks.
locks redone.
yeah, the
What,
jail was
in the
built
last month.
'94 and it has a lot of electronic locks, so when you're in one room, you go, let me through the door, and then they push the dispatch, and those locks had never been worked on for the last 28 years or whatever it is, 25, but. So, John, did you?
I just have a really quick comment from listening to everything, and you heard it, and you heard it mention of Costco not too long ago, and one of the things they figured out at Costco is they pay their employees pretty well, and they treat them pretty well, and the end result is they get what you saw.
John.
And it's cheaper, you heard the discussion about having to send new people off for 3 months for training. It's cheaper to treat your people well enough, and that's both management and payment, to treat your people well enough that you can keep them, than it is to have to keep replacing them.
Sure.
Simple as that. And I think the management idea is a good one.
Okay. Anyone else had a question on Mr. Hand Up earlier, Mr. Ornelas?
Just a question, because I know that during my administration, we looked at how to reduce food costs. And then we had taken a look at that, and there wasn't some things available that I think are available now. And I think there was a proposal, if I'm not mistaken, that was brought before the commission as to how much money was going to be saved if they changed to a different food system. Mike, do you recall?
That was that,
That frozen food,
Yeah, the frozen
yeah.
food.
Yeah, we kind of tabled that, we never did make a decision yet.
But
We had,
how much would be saved, though, did they figure?
was it about 7,000 a year?
no, it was more than that.
Well, I think that.
Well, that's why the administrator is
Yep.
so
Yeah.
important,
Yeah, let them-
you know, to deal with those
Yeah.
contracts,
The issue
and
with
negotiate
that,
them.
Ernie, is long-term, yes, we would save quite a bit a year, however, it's the startup cost because you have to put in a huge.
You had to buy a big-
I just didn't know how much, I was just
Right,
questioning.
it's
Yeah.
about $7,000 for
Minimum, I think.
minimum, but it's the initial that gets
I
you, so we
mean, the
just
first year
haven't
was
had
kind
the
of a
initial.
wash. The second year,
But
where
it's
you
not,
start seeing
it's not enough
savings.
money to be able to use.
No, it wasn't that. And then we'd have the other thing where local businesses would wonder why we're not utilizing them.
I've had inmates,
With that?
get too crappy of food, then they start whining. You just gotta-
Well, it's just one of those things, administrative, that's why, like,
That's
the
why-
whole, what it costs per inmate per day, all that can be evaluated and adjusted to, you know, at 65, Missoula's running, they say theirs costs $105 a day. And so, you know,
Mhm.
it may be that. there's-
Actually, your food costs are gonna be down right now because you're not using it. So, but, yeah. I talked to some other, actually professional people that work at the county that they knew they were gonna make less, but they're very happy with their jobs and they're happy with, you know, their management and they feel good at their jobs and that's what makes them stay here, so. Sometimes you won't make as much as the other places, but I think if they're happy in what they're doing, they look forward to going to work,
Mhm.
really makes a
I don't know, I
difference.
think people have to be valued and
And that's,
appreciated. and-
right, and I think that's probably, hopefully, the person that you look for, that's a goal, one of the goals, that you want that person to have that kind of personality, to be able to do that, so.
Well, you have to look at too is we pay the total health insurance.
Exactly.
And that's over $4 an hour per employee, just for that. I know they say, well, that doesn't matter. Well, it does matter.
Sure.
You also can't pay rent with health insurance.
What?
You also can't pay rent with health insurance. And I get that we're not a big county, but I'm gonna throw this out there, is that this summer, when I was self-employed, splitting firewood and painting houses and building porches, I was making 20 an hour. I took a pay cut to work here, and I didn't quit because I promised that man I'd stay here at least 3 years, because I'm planning on starting a career instead of just a job. I'm not saying you gotta give us 20 an hour. What I'm saying is that if you give us 10 an hour, you're gonna have a revolving door with your employees, because state competitive average is 14 an hour. Can we do 14 in Mineral County? Probably not, but we sure as hell ain't gonna keep employees around here on 10.
Mr. Hanson, you had your hand up.
You can get health and insurance. sick leave and annual leave.
I don't know.
For
The
me, it's
pay was
redundant
not
anyway, because I'm covered by
top
VA,
priority
so.
of the people.
Mr. Hanson, you have the floor.
Oh, yeah. I think like every time I've come here and worked here, I don't feel like confident that things are gonna be okay. I just lose hope. You feel so alone. This place, it's always run somehow. You know, it's never been perfect, never been bad, but when you have somebody that'll have your back, things get bad. Instead of standing on both sides, you got the inmates and you got the law enforcement and you got all the food and the medication. It's just too much. But if you install some confidence, like if this happens, well, this is what's going to happen. If this happens, this is going to happen. Instead of walking like, oh yeah, well, this will be taken care of. You just tell the supervisor. Supervisor tells nobody, doesn't go anywhere. I've stood in the holding cell and I've looked, and if I ever had a loved one coming here, I'd probably ask for them to move. It's one person cannot watch 30 people and then take care of their food and their medication and then do the probation information and all that stuff. It just stays taxed up on, and if you have a question, you don't know who to talk to. And there's no set plan to say, oh, you know, this is going to happen if somebody's hurt, if somebody comes in violent, like we had Bo destroy the holding cell. Just move to the next cell. Destroy that cell. Move to the next cell. Destroy the next cell. Got on the next cell. We had no plan to stop him from hurting or destroying the facility. That's just the way it is. And just put him in the holding cell. Or destroy the holding cell. That's the only thing that we had going for us.
No direction or protocol, in your opinion, then, for systematic
Well,
planning?
just installing confidence that it'll be okay. If there's a problem, you're only two sets of eyes that can watch all these people. And kind of scary, like I can be distracted doing other things. And, you know, there's cameras, but there's not very many cameras. It's very unsettling to know that they're free to do as will. And they have people that watch the windows to see if you're watching, and half the time you're so busy you can't. That's why you need to leave and have four sets of eyes, somebody watching you while you're doing something else. It's very, and if you get stuck behind a door, there's just no worse feeling in the world when I'm stuck behind a door with all these people that are angry at me. And the best thing, I have no weapons, and I have no badge, I have no way of, you know, displaying authority, but, you know, talking civilly, be nice to them. That's all you have. So if you can't open a facility where people be safe on the inmate side and the jailer side, they're disconnected. And like you said, NY, next, just your confidence is gone.
It just comes in on staffing. It's really, I mean, to have two, it'd be great if we could afford to have two detention officers on at all times. So they have backup and whatnot, but financially,
Right,
here we are.
Mineral County.
I think you'll have to if we're gonna keep it full. I just think it'd be
Well, and
safe.
then you can have you can have 2 all day, 3 all day, as Lance was mentioning. But if they are not properly trained, it doesn't matter if you have 5 of them on staff. They have training is the key. We have to get the training.
Training and pay are two sides of the same coin, because if you train somebody here and they don't feel they're getting paid well enough, they'll show up here because they know we're desperate enough to take them. They'll take us for a ride to get all the qualifications, and they'll go to the
Mrs. McGowan.
Spot on.
Well, I just wanted to say, as a property owner and a taxpayer and a longtime resident, I think public safety is the biggest issue, and I think the fact that the jail's closed right now, I mean, not only is it a factor as far as public issue, or public safety, but also the fact that we are continually losing money each day that goes by. And listening to everybody here, it sounds like having a good administrator is a good place to start, and it needs to be done as soon as possible. You know, listening to Lance, it needs to be opened up within a month or as fast as we can, for several reasons. And then, I mean, all these issues are definitely issues that need to be looked at. And I agree with people about the salary. I mean, but I think there's something that can be worked on. And I think this committee has done a really good job, and I know they don't want to be in this for the long term. So if we can get that administrator ad in right away and start working on it, I mean,
Okay. Is there any other discussion or comments? And maybe we'll just have to take some action here, see if there's a motion to move forward with. Want everybody to be able to be heard though first, so any other hands, comments, questions? Melinda?
you don't want to hear that.
I'm just teasing you.
So do you need a motion?
Well, yeah.
Them three.
No, but not from you.
No, just making sure
no,
nobody
no,
else has any
I was
comments.
waiting for any further public comment or
I know, I didn't
discussion.
hear any, so I was.
Yeah, I was still waiting in case there's somebody shy. And, unless Truman wanted to speak again. I'm just kidding.
He's not shy.
I know he's not shy. Or Mr. Seaman either.
I mean, really,
It's good to hear.
I'm 100% behind everything that's here. But I'm also 100% saying that a lot of people are not doing their job. And that's the problem we've got in this county. We've got a hospital that got in trouble. We lost how many? $500,000. John Wood, or all of them, were on that board. They weren't doing their job.
He wasn't on
The
the
guy
board.
left.
He was not on the
You know,
No, he was not on the board.
Okay.
he wasn't on there then. Sorry. But anyway, sorry, John. But, you know, we gotta, as a community, we've gotta tighten up our belt and start doing what we need to be doing.
Okay. Well, from the recommendations of the jail committee, it seems like there's some steps that might need to take place first, second, maybe third, so I don't know what we want to do. Is there a thought for a motion on the board of the commission?
Well, I make a motion that we adopt the 7 recommendations put forth here by the jail committee and get to it as quickly as possible. Prioritize the advertising of the detention center administrator. And I don't know how you say we're gonna have to wait on the wage issue until we can,
Well, like Lance said, we'll advertise depending on experience, and hopefully by the time I meet with the union on the 20th. But the first thing, any of this funding, the jail administrator already, more money for jailers and dispatchers, has to be funded by something. What are you suggesting? in your motion?
well, in this number,
We thought it would be around 15 or 16.
reduce the number of
Just by looking
deputies
at
by
that.
1.
Oh, okay. I don't have that in front of me now, so. Yeah, go ahead and put that in your motion, Mr. Simon, if you could. So to,
Well, I thought I did.
okay, you said the 7 thing.
Yeah, that's one.
It's in there, number 4. Did you want to?
Okay.
There we go, so
I just want Miss Lady Casey to give it incorrect here. So Mr. Simons, okay, go ahead with your motion, and I'll repeat it for the record.
Okay. I make a motion that we adopt the 7 recommendations put forth to us by the jail committee. And we prioritize, I guess, first of all, we look at where the money's gonna come from, and number 4 takes care of that to some extent. I would like to say at some point in time, we do want to apply, in my opinion, we do want to apply for the COPS grant as soon as possible and hopefully get you back a deputy. But until we have some money before us here to see where we're going. And then number 2, advertise the administrator position for the detention center.
We did.
Okay, so for those of you that aren't familiar with what we're looking at for the 7, Mr. Simons' motion constitutes number 1, detention center complete their maintenance and refurbishing in the jail, and then to go on with immediately advertising for the hiring of a head administrator using the job description that's provided by Sanders County. Is that correct?
I would, you're
think
gonna
there's
have
another
to
one
change
too.
it a
Yeah,
little
well,
bit.
And change it,
Take the
to make it
dispatch.
fit us. Number 3, then the county immediately continue to advertise hiring of detention officers, pay to be depending on experience. I can meet with the union and we can get that hashed out when applicants come. Number 4, to fund this, the county would reduce the number of deputies by 1 for this, hopefully a short period of time. That's where the funding would come for the above said criteria. Number 5, the county separate the detention center from the sheriff's office and have the detention center administrator report directly to the commissioners. Is that part of your motion? Okay. Number 6, the county requests that upon completion of the maintenance and painting the detention center, that members of Missoula County Detention Center inspect the facility prior to its reopening. That cost to be covered by the graciousness of Lance's Connection, free by Missoula County and their willingness to help us. And number 7, and finally, the county opening a line of communication with Missoula County regarding assistance with the operation with the center and the ability to possibly use some of their detention officers for field training and supervision. And everybody on the committee agree with what I stated? Any changes, amendments to Mr. Simon's motion? Is there a second first? Or no?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion with a first and a second. Any further discussion from the public before we ask for a vote?
Is there any detention officers within that are employed currently that would be interested in that position?
If they had all the benefits he listed, I'd do it. I'm military, I've been NCO, I've been a leader, I've had some pretty crazy training for some pretty big jobs. If I had the benefits he listed, I'd go for it. But right now, it's
Are
a
they
pretty
going
big...
to have to apply as for everybody else?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I think what you just said is, I anticipate there's definitely people that are qualified.
I mean, they're already here, they
No, I
already know
agree.
the system.
Well, sometimes when you advertise, it can be in-house and outside all at the same time. So we take in-house applications, outside applications, and then review them and interview. The sheriff would be on the interview panel and some, and then go for the most qualified, yeah. So, any other questions or discussion before we call a vote?
That included the COPS grant.
Oh, yes, and we will add part 8, unless Mr. Commissioner, can I amend your motion?
Oh, yeah, you've got.
I will amend an 8th part that, referring to the funding, that this deputy is going to, not hiring of one deputy will be for hopefully a short period of time, because part number 8 will be, you need to apply for a COPS grant to replace that deputy as soon as possible.
And who's gonna be responsible for working on that grant?
I offered to help. I did a lot of grant writing back in my shelter days, and I know community-oriented policing stuff, so we can
All right.
hopefully knock it out.
So
And
hopefully
since I'm
we
on
can.
tape, I can't go back. That is being recorded, Mary?
So I'll repeat that I do have a union meeting on the 20th, so maybe we can actually get all this stuff rolling, and like Mr. Jasper said, it'd be nice to get it done within 30 days, because we are, and Mr. Puckett, it is a critical point, we're losing money every day, so we want to do this quicker rather than later, and so I think we can make it happen. I want to thank everybody for their time, but first of all in favor of Commissioner Simon's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Being none? So yeah, thank you guys for your time, ex-jailers, ex-commissioner, county attorney, sheriff, Attorney Jasper.
No, we're not letting you go.